and I just really love the way that this area has turned out. George can't believe that I didn't plant these things now, but nope, these all came back. It's been a really busy few weeks. We've done a lot of planting and some good progress on our project. So today we're going to share a little update. Hi, it's Steph. Welcome back to my garden. It is mid-May and I can hardly believe how fast this month is going. We've been so busy with our project that I've been squeezing in little pockets of planting any chance I get. And starting with this bed here, I planted out some new Dusty Miller. This is the new look variety that I've been starting from seed for the last several years. And you can see that only one of them, the largest one, survived the winter. The others were new ones that I started this year, but it provides a really pretty pop of silver here in a swoop in the front of this bed when you drive into the driveway. And last year, I added a lot of annuals in my landscape, and I loved the color that it provided all season long. And this is one that I did grow in this area last year. I liked it so much, I'm doing it again. It's the Campfire Marshmallow Bidens. They're a small, compact, bushy plant with tons of flower power. It pumped out these little white flowers that to me look like cosmos all season long. I absolutely love them, so we're doing that again. And I also grew some annuals inside the bed. So last year I did the Cleome, Senorita Rosalita, which was beautiful, and some dahlias. So this year I'm doing the Rockin' Playin' the Blues Salvia and some Truffula Pink Gomphrena. So those are already planted in there. You can't really see them because they're still kind of small, but I think they're going to look gorgeous. We have some things blooming. My geum in the back there, that is the Mai Tai geum. Such a pretty, dainty little rosette. I love that color. It's like a pretty apricot, gorgeous. And this lupin, which I picked up recently at Lowe's, beautiful color. Now I'm hoping that this returns for me. It is perennial, but I haven't had the best luck with some of these hybrid lupin returning for year 2. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed because this one's absolutely gorgeous. And along the front here, last year I grew some verbena, which is an annual, a white verbena, but this year I'm growing this Orchid Blush Sun Patient. If you've never grown Sun Patients before, they're an excellent annual. They love sun. In contrast to Impatiens, which are more for shade, the Sun Patients can take sun. And this color I grew last year in my shed planters, so beautiful. So I think this is going to look really lovely here. And in this bed here by the shed, we've been working on a couple of things since we last filmed. And one of those was edging it out with some cobblestone. Now we had a different type of edging in this bed, and recently we were able to pick up some more cobble so that now it matches the other beds in our backyard. And George did a really good job in laying it. You can see that we still need mulch, so it's still under construction, but we did plant a couple of things. I went ahead and planted a drift of some hydrangeas here. Now you might recall that last summer I was invited by Proven Winners to visit Walter's Gardens, who is the home of their perennials, as well as Spring Meadow Nurseries, which does the Proven Winner shrubs. And I mentioned that I didn't have any macrophylla type hydrangeas in my garden. So they sent these 3 out to me with this really great tag, and these are the Let's Dance Sky View. And what's great about this type of macrophylla hydrangea is that it's a reblooming variety. So here are the specs on it. The Let's Dance Sky View reblooming big leaf hydrangea can take 4 to 6 hours of sun per day. It is hardy in zones 4 through 9 or down to negative 30 degrees Fahrenheit, and it gets to be 2 to 3 feet tall, 2 to 4 feet wide. And I'm most excited about the reblooming. Now with macrophylla type hydrangeas, the color of the blooms will be very dependent on the acidity of the soil. So if you have more acidic soil, you'll get a more blue type hydrangea. And if you have a more alkaline, you might get something purple or pink. Now I've never tested my soil, so we're gonna have to wait and see what color they bloom. But I'm excited to have these here. I think as they fill out, it'll look really pretty. You can see we have our stone in memory of our pup Vince that passed away, which is why we planted this magnolia here. And once we get mulch down, I think it's gonna look a lot better. Mulch is always such a nice finishing touch in the landscape, I find. It really sets off your plants. It just makes things look more finished. And speaking of things being more finished, we finished this apron. We also talked about inlaying an apron here out of cobblestone, and I think it turned out really nicely. So now George is trying to patch the grass in this area. And here in my window boxes, my alyssum is looking so pretty. These are flowers that I started from seed. I have two varieties. The white is the carpet of snow and the purple is the oriental nights. I also started violas and pansies, but they had a hard time germinating, so they're not doing that well. But pretty soon we'll be putting some summer annuals in these containers. But here in our Japanese maple garden, our colors are looking so beautiful at the moment. We have a collection that really shines in spring, and George and I are going to be filming a garden tour in this area in the next few days, and we'll be sure to share that. But my pulmonaria or lungwort here is blooming, and the bumblebees absolutely love it. And I just really love the way that this area has turned out. Now that the trees are growing, we're getting more shade, which is giving me the opportunity to experiment with some more shade plants. And this bed that we created at the end of the season last year, at the very late part of summer or early fall, is looking lovely. Everything came back and looks beautiful. And about a month ago, everything looked still pretty bare. And George can't believe that I didn't plant these things now. He thought that I just planted them this spring, but nope, these all came back. And everything is filling out wonderfully. I'm so happy with the way this turned out, the way that the plants are layered. It just makes me so excited. But I did actually plant just a couple of things this past week, and they are a couple of plants that I'm trialing for proven winners. They're actually going to be available next year, and it's a new variety of allium. Now this is a perennial clumping allium, and the variety is called All the Buzz. It likes full sun, part sun, and it'll get to be 14 to 18 inches in height, and it needs about 16 to 20 inch spacing. Hardy in zones 4 through 8 or down to negative 30 degrees Fahrenheit. I planted a swoop of 5 across the front of this bed. And I also have another plant that I planted on the other side that is a new variety of penstemon. So let's go ahead and take a look at that one. So this is called the Bejeweled Lavender Sapphires penstemon. They like full sun, and they're also pretty short at 16 to 18 inches in height. It's going to have a really pretty vibrant purple coloration, and it's an upright type perennial, and it needs about 20 to 24 inch spacing, so it's going to get wider than it is tall. Hardy in zones 4 through 8 or down to negative 30 degrees Fahrenheit. So I have a drift of 3 in this area, one there, here in the center, and another on the side. This one actually has a couple of blooms, and you can see it's a very light pinkish purple. Now this well bed came about because we had a well head that we wanted to disguise, and we had bought a faux rock. And then when we put down the faux rock, we said, well, let's put some plantings around it to soften it. And it turned into this bed, which I was excited about because it gave me more planting space. But as we were doing that, George mentioned, hey, you said you wanted some more paths around the garden. Why don't we add a smaller bed here that will create a path so that as we come up from the area where our raised bed garden is and where our greenhouse will now be, and we head towards our Japanese maple garden, we'll have another little grassy path. And I thought that was a great idea. But this bed was missing something. It was missing an anchor or a centerpiece. So recently, George was standing here like a tree, and he was explaining that if we had something tall in this area, it would kind of draw your eye back. So George, who is now officially a gardener, had a really great idea. And we had this beautiful conifer that I had picked up, and we finally found the perfect centerpiece for this bed. This is a Serbian spruce, and it's a gorgeous conifer by Isley, and it has a narrow growth habit, which is going to make this a nice tall upright feature in this area. And it's called the Bruns Weeping Serbian Spruce. You can see it has a really cool shape, and it's a narrow upright, growing 6 to 12 inches per year. In 10 years, it'll get to be about 15 feet in height, 3 feet in width, and it is hardy down to negative 30 degrees Fahrenheit. And it wants full sun, which it will get full afternoon sun in this area. And look at these gorgeous cones that it gets in the spring. Really pretty shade of kind of like a purple red, gorgeous. Now, if you recall, I had alternated the front border of this bed with some carex. This is some variegated carex that I transplanted from another area, and I had alternated it with some wildberry heuchera. Well, I've mentioned before that I have terrible luck with heuchera, and none of them returned. They all died, and so I had to replace some plants in this area. So I cut back the carex so that I can flush out with some new growth, and what I did was I planted some dark side of the moon astilbe, which has a really pretty dark red foliage. And I also recently picked up some Veronica. This is the Magic Show White Wands Veronica that I picked up at the Home Depot. And I grabbed 4 of those. And I ordered some Lugularia, the bottle rocket variety, which is this foliage right here. And you can see that it's going to get some yellow blooms with this really pretty tuft of foliage. And I ordered these from Great Garden Plants, which I had never ordered from them before. And the plants came in looking great. And they were a smaller quart-sized container, which made them really easy to plant. So now I have the storm-proof hydrangeas in the back that I planted last season. And along the front, I've alternated the Carex with the Magic Show White Veronicas with the Lugularia and the Dark Side of the Moon Astilbe. And I think as this fills out, it's going to be a really serene and beautiful bed. And I wanted to do some rhythm and repetition with a couple of the plants so that this bed would echo this bed. So that's what I did with the Dark Side of the Moon Astilbe. I have a drift of 3 on this side, and now I have them planted along the front of this bed as well on the right. But from our last video where we talked about this area, we mentioned that we were putting in a cobblestone apron here as well at the top of our path, and that is now completed, and I think it turned out really nicely. Now the path still looks really raw because we're still working on it. But something else we've been doing is installing some edging. Now this edging is not here to be decorative. It's actually just a separator between what will be gravel and what will be mulch. And so eventually you probably won't see much of it, but we had some questions about what type of edging this was. It is a Corten steel edging. I had posted a reel or a story on Instagram, and a few people asked if it was Edgerite. It is not Edgerite. It's actually by Vivor, and we bought it ourselves. And why we decided on this type was that George liked that there was a panel that you could screw to hold each piece together. So right there you can see that there are some screws, and we thought that that was going to make it more secure and hold together a bit better, especially as he was bending these curves. To do this loop here in the end, he actually bent some of these pieces, George, around a tree, and it worked out really well because what I didn't want was jagged edges, so he was able to get a nice gradual curve by doing that, which was really smart. So visualize it. This is all going to be gravel, the path coming this way. These sides are all going to be mulch, so everything is really starting to come together, and George and I are seeing the vision and getting really excited for how this will look once it's complete. So on either side of the path, there's going to be some plantings. I've actually already started to place some plants, and I actually planted a couple of things. So in this bed here in the center, I planted a group of 3 roses. Now we have talked about roses in my garden before and how they don't normally do well for me, but I am going to try these because they're really pretty. They're the Flavorette Honey Apricot Rose by Proven Winners, and it's an edible rose, which is appropriate for it to be outside of a raised bed garden where I grow veggies and flowers. And most roses do want full sun, so 6+ hours of sun per day, which they will get here in this bed. They're hardy in zones 4 through 8 or down to -30 degrees Fahrenheit, and they're going to get pretty tall, so eventually I might have to put some obelisks here. It says 5 to 8 tall, 3 to 4 wide, but that is if they are happy in my garden, which I have a bad track record, so we will have to wait and see. But it is gorgeous. Look at all of these petals. Such a pretty rose. So I'm certainly excited to see if that works out or not. And the other plant that I am planning to plant here is a drift of lavender coming down the path. And this is a new variety that I'm also trialing that will be available in 2027. These 3 are in full bloom and they smell amazing. It is the Summer Serenade lavender. They get to be 16 to 20 inches in height. They want full sun and a well-draining soil. All lavender does. And it will get to be about 18 to 24 inches in width. Hardy in zones 5 through 9 or down to -20 degrees Fahrenheit. So I thought it would look really lovely to have a lined path of lavender. You might remember that in the middle of where this path is now, we had a huge crater from a rock that we had to dig out that was right in the middle of the path. And we finally got that under control, filled up with some soil. This fabric is still a mess, but remember, this is going to be covered with gravel. And so things always have to get worse before they get better. And we were in that messy middle, and now we're starting to kind of go over the hump into what we can see to be a really beautiful space. And this hillside area, all of these rug junipers are filling out perfectly, exactly how I had hoped and envisioned when I planted them 3 years ago. If you have an area that is difficult to mow, that is difficult to retain mulch because it's hilly, these are a great solution. They're an evergreen ground cover. You can see that they grow kind of like a carpet, so they cover a lot of space, which means they will retain weeds beautifully, and they just look really pretty. And so that is what we have going on. I'm actually going to pick up a couple more for the other end, but we've planted a couple of other things in this area, starting with this moonstone, which is a really beautiful kind of round shaped shrub. This is an evergreen. It has this gorgeous blue color. It's putting on all of its new growth for spring. And let me find the tag so I can give you the specs on it. It stays really compact. So it's part of the Blues collection by Isley, and it is the bluest color that you can get in a spruce, and it is cold hardy, globe shaped, grows 2 to 4 inches a year, which is very slow growing, meaning it's a dwarf conifer, and it has a garden size of 2 feet high, 3 feet wide, and that's a 10-year size. Hardy down to negative 50 degrees Fahrenheit, so super hardy. And we actually planted 2 of these in this area, and we have to try to find a third. So my nursery only had 2. I'm gonna go on a hunt for another to plant down that way to have that rhythm and repetition. And our greenhouse, which we talked about in our last video, has arrived. It was delivered by freight. It's sitting in our driveway, and we're gonna get started on it hopefully later this week. And if you missed that video, we're installing an 8.5 by 12.5 Victorian greenhouse by Vago Garden. It is a glass-sided greenhouse with a polycarbonate roof, has a black frame. I think it's gonna look really pretty in this space. And right behind where our greenhouse is going to be, we actually planted a new maple. And George actually had this idea that because the greenhouse is going to be glass, he wanted something with color in the back that would draw your eye in. And I thought that was a great suggestion. And so what we've done is we planted this maple here, which is new to us. It is by Isley, and it is called Alpine Glow. Let me get the tag for you to see here. Here it is. It's part of the Jack Frost collection, and when we show our Japanese maples, we often get questions about a maple that can withstand cold temperatures because most varieties are only hardy between zones 5 and 8. And this one here, the Alpine Glow maple, is an Isley introduction, and it is hardy, very hardy, down to a zone 4 or negative 30 degrees Fahrenheit. It's in broad, upright, grows 12 to 15 inches per year, and will eventually get up to 15 feet in height, 12 feet in width, and it wants sun to part shade. And I think this gorgeous red coloration, and it'll stay about this color, then it goes a little bit bronze, and then shades of orange in the fall. I think this is going to look stunning in this area. And some of the other trees that we planted in this area are also Isley, and we have lots of Isley conifers in our garden. I just love them. I buy them at my local nursery, and if you're ever looking for Isley plants, go on the Isley website and check their retail store locator, put in your zip code, and it'll show nurseries near you that carry Isley plants. But let me show you some gorgeous conifers that I'm super excited about. Some weeping Alaskan cedars. I have loved these trees for several years. Never had the right place that I thought they would look good in our garden until now. They have such a whimsical shape. George actually refers to them as ghost trees because of the way that they weep. And I planted 3 in this area surrounding our greenhouse. And I am so excited to see these grow. So here's the variety. It is the Jubilee Weeping Alaskan Cedar by Isley. You can see the shape of them. They're really majestic looking. Love them. And this variety, it says it's a broad upright, grows 15 inches per year. It will eventually get to 25 feet in height, 12 feet in width, but it has a very airy growth habit, so it's not going to look that big. I think they'll fit this space perfectly. And they're hardy down to negative 20 degrees Fahrenheit, and they want full sun. So what we did was we spaced them kind of like in a V shape around this area. So there's one here, and there are 2 more in this space. Now I have to be careful walking around here because this is a really raw area, but once we bring in our gravel, it's going to really level things off and make it a lot better. But here's the second one, and here's the third one. I'm now at the top of our hillside garden, and to give you some perspective, I'm looking down on the area where we're going to have our greenhouse and where we've planted those 3 Alaskan cedars as well as the alpenglow maple. And we recently planted a new pine up in this area, and this is just turning out so nicely. You can see again all of those blue rug junipers, and then as you come up here, this border has several different conifers and different color contrasts as well as a couple of shrubs. And we added this one recently. George and I planted it. It came in a crate. It was a pretty large specimen, but it is the Angel Falls Eastern White Pine by Isley. And it is a tall, kind of weeping pine, which is a really pretty statement piece. And when you're coming into the yard and you're looking down and you see all of these conifers in staggering patterns, I think it's going to look really pretty over time. Now this specimen here, you can see, has a weeping shape. It's an Isley introduction, and it grows 12 to 15 inches per year. The garden size, anytime that you have a weeping specimen, the size is going to vary because weeping in general, they kind of keep a more compact habit because they grow downwards. And it's hardy down to -40 degrees Fahrenheit, so super hardy, and it likes full sun. So the next step in this area is certainly going to be to mulch, and that's going to even set things off a bit more. And I think that this is going to be such a beautiful space once everything is done. Now, it's taking us a lot of time to get this area done because it's mostly just George and I whenever we have some time together. And between life and working, there's not a lot of time to go around. But we can see the vision, and it's really pulling together. And when it's all said and done, I think it's going to be such a beautiful space. Well, that's an update on the project as well as all the plantings we've been doing. Let me know if you have any projects going on in your garden and how that's going. Thank you so much for spending your time with me, and I'll catch you in the next one.